What's going on, everybody? Today I want to talk about why tier lists suck. So listen, they're not actually terrible. They're great for driving engagement to your social media channels. They're great for stirring up controversy and discussion. So that's what tier lists are actually good for. They're good for discussion purposes. But I think there's a lot of nuance and a lot of information that gets really lost when discussing tier lists. And it often boils down to people being like, oh, who's top tier? Who's bottom tier? And they think that tells the whole story about the meta of a game. So what really got me thinking about this was, first off, Lord Punk the God came out with his Season 5 tier list. Season 5 tier list, again, I do not care what anyone thinks, which I think must be clickbait, because the point of a tier list is to make sure that everyone expresses how you're horribly wrong and how their opinion is correct. So he came out with this tier list, and it was pretty interesting to me. He puts a lot of the usual suspects in the top tier. Some surprise things were like having Dhalsim here and Eggs. A lot of people consider Dhalsim to be pretty bad. And Balrog and Bede, this was before the nerfs, before the -4 nerfs. So he put Balrog not at the top position like many people would have you believe, but overall, this is what your average tier list looks like, but it does not tell you the whole picture. And that's why tier lists are bad. They're very bad because, if you look at most people's tier lists, you might just see a lot of things. Like you might just expect a couple of these, maybe a dash of those in the top tier, maybe one of these in the top tier, something of that nature. But it really does not tell you the whole picture, right? If you look at what people are actually discussing, you might think the entire game is literally just Street Fighter 5 Cammy Edition, right? But that's not the case, right? I mean, people for the longest time were talking about how Dhalsim so bottom tier. Dhalsim is terrible, is unwinnable. Well, I cooked up these examples before this past weekend, but we can look at one of these locals. We had an all top 3 Dhalsim tournament. NYC Furby, Lord, Arturo Sanchez, Dinkadies, and K-Money rounding out the top 3 of an event. All Dhalsim. Can you imagine winners finals, losers finals, and grand finals all being Dhalsim mirrors? That is intense. And then beyond that, of course, we had this past weekend, we had Mr. Crimson with an amazing performance at Red Bull Kumite. And this wasn't some online local. This wasn't some like East Coast of USA. This was the best invited to perform. And Mr. Crimson took it over the names like Punk, Tokido, Bonchan, Problem X, and he won Red Bull Kumite, all with Dhalsim. Low tier Dhalsim has been nerfed to the ground, unplayable. So if you were to look at tier lists and look at what everyone's saying, you would assume that Dhalsim is garbage and unplayable and would have no chance of winning, right? Another example, CPT North America West 1. Top 8 of this event had Dinkadies, Dhalsim, and Commander Jesse Dhalsim, and even a Fong. No Cammy in sight here, but you got to be honest, the other CPT events have all been won by Cammy. So Cammy has taken 3 out of the 4 spots so far. Or sorry, 3 out of the past 5 spots. We got a Balrog and Capcom Cup, so Balrog must be top tier. But what am I getting at? Why am I saying these tier lists are whack and providing these examples of how these tier lists might be misleading? Well, what's better, Brian? What are you asking me? What could be better? Provide a solution. Don't just complain. Let me show you something here that might shock and awe you. What are we looking at? It's probably illegible from this side, but what we're looking at is what we used to call in the olden days a matchup chart. This is a matchup chart of Street Fighter 4 with all the characters on it, detailing how each character performs against each other. So it's really tiny on the screen. If you go to the top left here, that's CAM, Cammy, and on the bottom left here, it's Cammy. So Cammy versus Cammy, you see where the row and the column intersect. Cammy versus Cammy in the mirror is going to be 5-5, of course. But if you look at the row, the top row, Cammy, the next one, on the second column, it's a 6, and that's versus Akuma on the bottom, AKU. So Cammy versus Akuma is Cammy favor 6-4. That's kind of how you can read this. You just got to match the rows or the columns of the character to get the matchup information. And they organized it with the top row being the character with the best matchups when you add up the sum of the matchups out of 10, and the bottom one would be the worst. So I don't know how accurate this data is, because Cammy, once again, apparently was dominating Street Fighter 4. She has the best matchups in the game, according to this matchup chart. And the bottom is Oni, below Dan. Dan apparently has more good matchups than Oni. So this data must be a little suspect. But the point here is, it shows you how even these low tier characters can have good matchups. Even the characters that you think might not be that good can still have strong matchups. So if we look over here, like on the bottom right, for example, apparently T-Hawk, third worst in the game according to this matchup chart here, still beats Dan 7-3. He still has an amazing matchup versus Dan. GOE, which I think is Goken, apparently beats EHO. Is that E Honda? This data set must be from Super Street Fighter 4, pretty out of date. Goken, one of the worst characters in the game, 6.5 over E Honda. That means that even if E Honda apparently at this time, this is an older data set. Oh, Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition 2012. This low tier character has a winning match against a character that was considered top tier at the time. So what does this mean? Tier lists are very, very much too black and white. They just say who's top tier, who's bottom tier. They don't tell you that there's a lot of detail and matchups that happen in between. Dhalsim, a character considered by most to be low tier. I know Punk put him in A tier, but a lot of people put Dhalsim as pretty low tier, has horrible matchups. For example, I think Balrog smokes Dhalsim. That is a bad matchup for Dhalsim. However, if you play in a tournament run where there's no Balrogs in your path and you win the tournament, does that make your character top tier? Well, that's where it kind of doesn't really make sense to just talk about the tier. The matchups are what tell the story. Matchups give you a much better idea. Plus, there could be characters that are low tier that beat common top tiers that might become counter picks that people pick up. There's a lot more that goes into the meta besides who is top tier and who is not. If you even look up here, like Cammy has a lot of winning matchups, but not as many like 7s as some of these other characters. It looks like E Honda 7-3s 3 characters, even though he's not the #1 character, but Cammy only has 1 7-3. This data is a little weird to me, but you get the idea. Tier lists, they're purposely vague. They're designed for you purposely to have ambiguity so that you can spark discussion, drive your engagement numbers, and get debates. But when you really, really think about what is important in the meta, the tier is just kind of someone's opinion and they slap it on someplace, and it's more just an abstraction of how they feel at that time about that character. It does not tell the story. You can win with a low tier character if you get the right bracket, you don't run into any of your bad matchups, and you can play a high tier character and run into an obscure counter pick that can mess up your day because you're not prepared for that matchup. So it really boils down to the details. I just wanted to throw that out there. Tier lists, they're great. They suck at the same time. Don't just go asking for who's top tier, who's bottom tier. There's a lot more that goes into it. So the number one thing is play who you like. And then if you have bad matchups, think about what characters can help you in those matchups, not just who's top tier. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to pick up a top tier character for your own competitive efforts. Sometimes it makes more sense to look towards a specific solution. That said, go ahead and look at my tier list videos and click the likes on them and react to them in the comments and tell me what you think is top tier and not top tier to drive engagement. That's what the online meta is all about. The matchup chart with content creator versus tier list is definitely 10-0. We gotta do them every time. That's about it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.